the second ENRIITC webinar of the Enrich Your Knowledge. Today we have a very important set of speakers with us. Please keep your chat box for questions and mute your micro. After each presentation, we will start a question and answer, and then you will be invited to make the questions. First, and meanwhile everyone is joining us, we will have a short poll to ask you some very easy questions. It will take you not more than 2 minutes. First one, very easy one. Are you an ICO, an ILO, or another thing? You can click in the box giving your answer. In which S3 domain are you working? Energy, environment, health, food, physical science and engineering, social and cultural innovation, data computing, and digital research infrastructures. The third one is, do you plan to attend the next Enrich Your Knowledge webinars? You can, we have one in 18th of June, another one in 21st of June, and none of them. Of course, we will record your name if you click the none one. I'm just kidding, of course. Okay, after this short voting round, we'll go to our webinar of today. We have the pleasure to have important speakers with us. The topic of today is the basics of physical brokerage events for first-time organizers. So if you are young, ILO and ICO, and you have to organize physical brokerage events, it is today your day. You will learn a lot of tips and advices from prominent speakers with a lot of experience. First speaker is myself, Jorge López Rey, from CDTI in Spain. The second one is Nikolai Tangenberg from the Danish Technological Institute in Denmark. The third one is Caroline Boudou from the ILL. The fourth one is Claudia Fander from the Euro Bioimagine. And the last one is not really a speaker, is a member of the team of ENRIITC, and he is Ed Mitchell from the ESRF. He will make an announcement regarding the business, the opportunities for organizing brokerage events for associate members. With this, I will give you some housekeeping, some technicalities. Please note that this session is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, you are invited to leave. Please disable your camera if meanwhile presentations, only speakers will have the camera on. And only you can switch on your camera when the questions and answers will start after each intervention. And please have your micro muted during presentations, and mute your micro for questions and comments during the question and answer session. Enrich Your Knowledge is a series of online training webinars targeted to experts involved in setting up collaboration between research infrastructures and industry, such as ILOs and ICOs. The overall aim of this webinar is to share knowledge, experience, skills, and best practices amongst ILOs, ICOs, and interested people from industry. ENRIITC project is led by the ESS with 5 research infrastructures and 5 ILOs. It's a project from under the Horizon 2020 CSA, and is funded by the European Commission. Today's topic is the second topic, the second edition of the Enrich Your Knowledge webinars. We'll exploit the basic physical brokerage event ideas and for first-time organizers. Physical events can be quite challenging to organize. They could be very easy, but also quite complex, and there are really important key aspects to learn on how to organize them. ICOs and ILOs organizing these physical events has the responsibility to make worthy for industry and research infrastructures to attend to this physical event and make the most out of their participation. They're important persons, they are very busy guys, and they need to have a very great experience and a time to really interact and find what they want. In this webinar, experienced ILOs and ICOs from ENRIITC projects and from outside will give you the key aspects, tools, processes, and key advices organizing these physical events. And we hope that you will learn from them and how to ensure interaction between industry and research infrastructures in the brokerage events, in between industry and researchers. So with this, I will present today's speakers. Myself I'm Jorge Lopez from CDTI in Spain. My background is aeronautical engineer, specialized in space vehicles. I am at CDTI, which is the Spanish Innovation Agency, since 2014. And I am in charge of being ILO of national research infrastructures, and I am coordinator officers of the organization of the BSBF 2022. In second place, we have Nikolai Zagenberg. He's an ILO and was an ILO from CERN, ESRF, ILL, and European XFEL. And he is also co-founder of the Danish ILO initiative, Big Science DK. He managed a network of 300 Danish suppliers from the Big Science market. And before joining DTI and Big Science DK, he worked on research and development in the accelerator industry. The next one, we have the pleasure to have with us Caroline Boudou from ILL. She's a contract officer at the institute. And she's in charge of customer management, development, and collaboration with industry, and outreach about neutron characterization techniques. She's background is applied physics and spent her PhD time at ESRF. She worked for several years in the large and small companies, managing upstream studies, programs, and customer projects, the field of X-ray detectors. And finally, our last speaker, we have the pleasure to have Dr. Claudia Founder from EuroBioImagine in Industry Board. Claudia recently joined EuroBioImagine ENRIITC as the coordinator of its industry board, and uniting both roles, ILO and ICO roles. Her work focuses on generating networking opportunities between manufacturers, imaging facilities, and commercial users. Claudia has previously worked as a funding and innovation consultant specialist on public-private partnerships between life science institutions and the pharmaceutical industry, helping define the scope of pre-competitive collaborations and facilitating contact negotiations. So you see that we have a really excellent pool of speakers today. They will give us their experience on organizing physical events. And this is going to be a really not missing opportunity to learn a lot about how to organize physical events. After these speakers, we will have Ed Mitchell, Head of Business Development Unit at ESRF. And Ed is going to give some announcements about how associate members can organize brokerage events. So there's plenty of opportunities there for them to organize interesting brokerage events. Okay, so I think now I am going to jump to the first speaker, that just by chance it is myself. So my topic today is going to be key aspects to the organization of Big Science Business Forum 2022, as an example of a large-scale face-to-face brokerage event. As an introduction, the Big Science Business Forum, it is a big and very complex event that was organized for the first time by our ILOs from Denmark. It was a brilliant edition in 2018. We'll have some news and tips from Nikolai about the experience they had. Now we at CDTI in Spain, we are having the pleasure to organize it. I stress the word pleasure because it is really a pleasure in an ever continuous process on how to organize complex physical events. And this Big Science Business Forum is going to take place in 2022 in Granada. And the objective of this meeting is to join two worlds, the world of industry and the world of big science research infrastructures, and meet them to talk and to learn about business opportunities. With this introduction, you will learn much better my intervention today. Okay, so the title of for me is Large-Scale Face-to-Face Brokerage Events. The first thing you need is a branding, a name, an image, a branding, a well-known objective, very clear. Big Science Business Forum. We had one edition, now we have the next edition in 2022, and everyone recognized the logo, the idea. It's very important to know, to sell, which is the objective and the image of your event. You have to make leaflets, you have to make publicity, everything with the same image and with the same one and again, the same message about what you want and what is your message. The second important thing is you need a powerful message to attract participants. You need them to pay a flight, to spend some time in a country abroad, and they have to see that it is worth to go there. For what? For a big message. In our case, there is a procurement budget expected of 38,400 million euros in the period of 2022-2024. So this is a really big message that I am pretty sure it will attract a lot of people. This amount of money will come from big science research infrastructures, the ones organizing the event with us, and the associate ones. And this amount of procurement is directly to industry, to you, to the objective of the people that are going to come to our event. So you should be there because you have a lot of information about this big message. So you need to, first lesson, you need to attract people. Another way to attract people, it is to invite VIP persons and key persons to meet. So you have to select them very carefully. The local people from the ministries, the European people from the European Commission, they have to be invited. As well, you have to invite the DGs of these very important research infrastructures. It would be amazing to meet the DG of ESA or the Director General of FAIR or the Director General of SCAO or any other big science institution. Of course, industry will kill to meet these people, to try to sell that this industry is the best industry in Europe, that they really have a good idea to work with. So this sole industry in the middle of nowhere will have the opportunity to meet them. That's why they are going to go to your brokerage events. Two reasons: you have a big message, and you are going to have very important people to meet. Great. The next point is to attract people, you need to offer more than a classical program. A classical program is fine. It's full of activities. You have to keep busy the people, jumping from one activity to another activity. This is very crucial because they have to feel that they are not losing their time abroad in this event. They have to make decisions where to go because there are so important things going on that they have to choose from one to another. But in addition, you have to propose new things. You have to propose new things because you are expected to innovate in the program. You have to, for instance, in this brokerage event, which is a physical one for industry and research infrastructures, it is good to have a session for innovation. It is also good to have a session for SMEs. It's also good to have a session for technology. Another one for procurement, in which the big science institutions express how to make business with them and to explain which are the procurement rules. And very important as well, session for technology transfer. So a big message for you is, in addition to a classical program, innovate with great ideas that attract people to participate more actively. You cannot only expect people sit and relax and listen. You have to make them participate in your in your event. Another important point is that at the end, what we want from people meeting there in your event, we want a B2B meeting to exploit this interaction. We want the people meet and really transfer the ideas between the people, and really an opportunity in front of a table to share ideas, to share new technologies, or to share business opportunities. These people have to have the opportunity to meet. Okay, so let's make them their life easy. So let's put a registration with a tool for profile promotion, which they can everyone can show who they are, which are their expectations, which are what are they offering, and all of that. Make them in an interactive web page in which everyone can show themselves, and everyone can share another person's to meet. They'll then construct a web tool in which everyone can schedule their appointments, and then create this matchmaking meetings in a virtual arena, and then to have this oriented to physical tables. So you need a web tool, an application, an app in your mobile to have ready everything to really give you the possibility to schedule your own parallel event in regards B2B meetings. Announce yourself, advise yourselves, and then look for interesting people to meet. Very important, because at the end, this is the goal of our event, is to make the people meet and to make the people find the people they want to meet. Okay, also a very important way to interact is not in B2B meetings, is in exhibition areas and coffee areas. Sometimes people talk or speak about their ideas, maybe around the exhibition area, maybe around the catering, having a coffee. I have a friend of me that that sometimes asks me, what do you do during coffee break? Do you have coffee? No, the objective is not having coffee. The objective is to find the right person to talk to and to have a nice talk with that person, okay, sharing a coffee. But the real important thing is to talk and to interact. So coffee breaks, lunch times, and periods in which you can walk around the exhibition area are important moments to talk, to interact, and to make connections. So you have to provide those spaces. Another important point of physical events is to have a very good planned communication strategy and promotion strategy. Nowadays, everything goes around the web. And in the old-fashioned days, we only use email, but now everything's on the web. So put everything you want to tell on the web, and everything will go around. So build up an excellent web, very attractive one, and also very easy to surf and very complete in terms of content. Then you construct everything around it. You can organize the social media with news and announcing events. You even can create a YouTube channel for interviews or for video promotions, and then link this information with interviews from key persons. You can have short interviews, as we did with a BSBF short interviews channel, or you can organize webinars for specific topics that are going to be treated later on in the event, or just to create the expectation that the event is going to come, and then more and more people will be interested to go, because they will see that there is a lot going on around this event. You have to produce news, you have to create different types of communication products, such as the ENRIITC Your Coffee, which was an excellent initiative. And also you have to rely on your partners. In our case, our partners are the ILOs nets, the ILO organizations, Danish Technology Institute, the ILO net in the Netherlands, the Perea Network, and other ILOs that are helping us to promote the participation of industry in this event. So please take account with the organizations regarding associations of industry, or associations of big science in industry in the organizations helping you. And of course, why not? If you organize all of this in a beautiful event, or with a beautiful venue, and with interesting visits, then nothing can fail. In our case, we had the very luck to go to Granada, which is a beautiful place with the mountains, with the historic, its historic city. Also, we are going to invite the industry and the participants to two technical visits, very interesting ones. The one is solar PSA. It's a solar test facility, and another one is astronomic observatory. So it will not only be business; it will be also fun having these organized visits for them. And of course, with a nice, you will have to have a nice exhibition area for the stands to be shown. And why not a beautiful place to have a gala dinner with a beautiful view. Don't underestimate this in your planning, because sometimes people at the end decide to go to a place abroad, not only because the content and it's interesting because of business, it's also because it's a beautiful place. Another tip regarding traveling is that you have to get sure that in the place, in our case, Granada, you have a first quality network of hotels. This is important because for a small, medium city, you have 1,500 or 2,000 people more. It is something that could overload the hotel area. So we have to work on that. And also you have to guarantee that you have quite reasonable good flight connections, because this is really important. Not always there is the best connection with the first capitals here in Europe. So, concluding, make the people meet in a nice place. This is a message. If there are two people, you will meet the person you need. You have to give this message, and at the same time, if you have a great time, then it's perfect. Okay, that was my presentation. Thank you very much. You have any questions to my presentation? Now it's time for questions for my presentation. No questions? I hope it was interesting for you. If no questions, we will go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is going to be Nikolai Frankenberg from the Danish Technology Institute. Nikolai had a great experience organizing physical events because he had an excellent organization of the previous BSBF. And with this, Nikolai, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. You're quite right. It was an excellent experience with BSBF 2018, especially for me, since I had some colleagues or collaborators that handled most of the work, so I could just enjoy it. More about that later. So let me just see, can I minimize this one? Here you go. Yeah, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about, can you see the screen?
Yes, very well, Nikolai.
Great, excellent. So I'll give a little bit of an introduction to Big Science DK and what we've done. And then some examples of I selected 3 brokerage events, very different types, to just give you an overview of some of the good things and also challenges that we came across there. I think we were among the first in Europe to sort of collect the ILO functions into one office in Denmark. And we did that around 2010. So we actually had our 10-year anniversary last year for doing this thing. So we made a little publication where we gathered some success stories and some quotes from CERN and ESS and other people that we worked with. And then I also want to show the page where we have our members. So Denmark is a small country, and our members are spread out all over the country, and it's been steadily grown. So now we are actually about 350 members in the Big Science DK. So these are companies that thinks this is an interesting market, and potentially they could go into it. So they follow our newsletters and go to our events. I'll say it's not all 300 that are active, but it's free to receive our newsletter. So I guess a lot of people, they just get it as a spam mail, but we'll accept that as well. What is for those of you who are not active ILOs, what any ILO does is to have an interaction with big science organizations on one hand, understand the needs they have and the processes they have, and on the other hand, interact with companies in your own country to understand what they can supply and how close are they on being able to deliver different relevant goods and services to the big science organizations. This is ongoing all the time, this communication. At some point, the big science organization will issue a tender, and our companies need to make an offer to match that tender. And if they're good, then they win the contract, and otherwise not. And the green box there, the orders that come in, that's the KPI we're measured on. So in everything we do, we have to focus on how do we get the companies to win these contracts. So that's the task we have from the government. And then there's a lot of other things around it that we'll also briefly touch upon later here in the presentation. This interaction we have is quite important. It's quite important for us to understand both the big science organization and the companies. So we actually made this plot recently where we took our data on the left side about our members, which industrial sectors do they represent. Some of them are in more industrial sectors. That's why the number is above these 350 members. And what we see from the left plot is that we are quite strong with the members we have in materials processing and mechanical engineering, and also on support services, and actually electronics is also an area where we have some very good companies there. And then the graph on the right hand side is more relevant to most of you, because that's actually all the tenders that came out from big science organizations that we registered, and we also divided them into these sections to see what was the match between what was being requested from the facilities and what was being offered by our members. And we're quite happy to see that there's a good correlation between the two areas. So our members do cover the needs from the facilities. So I mean, knowing the companies in your country is extremely important, and obviously I cannot do that alone. So since we began, we've been actually a group of people working there. I'll especially highlight first Søren Bang-Korsholm, who co-created the Big Science DK and was also one of the main persons in the Big Science Business Forum 2018. The other main person is Juliette von Aris, who many of you also know, who was our network leader for several years until she was promoted to being a director at our international center. She was also the second person doing a lot of work at Big Science Business Forum. Right now, I think the main person to emphasize is Peter Frank, who's our network manager, and I think he's also at this meeting actually. And then secondly, Arne Jensen from the Danish Technical University, who's our ILO for ESS. So in this group, we actually share our knowledge about the companies in Denmark, about the different tenders and the technicalities of the tender, and have discussions about which companies are relevant for what tenders and how do we approach it. And of course, we also co-organize events. the last thing I did want to mention is that I'm wearing different hats. One of them is being an ILO. At the same time, I'm running our Big Science Center at the Danish Technological Institute. So the supplier side is shown on the left box. So this is the Big Science DK. We're working with suppliers to Big Science market, but we also work with technology transfer or using technologies from the Big Science area to be used in industry, the middle box. And finally, we have a fairly big activity on providing analytical services for companies at different, in particular, neutron and synchrotron facilities. But that's sort of a sidestep just to see that we have strategically at DTI actually set up a unit that focuses on the interaction between Big Science facilities and companies. So I selected, as I said, 3 events that I'm just going to tell you a little bit about. The first one was already mentioned by Jorge, the Big Science Business Forum, and it was actually a huge success, which was, I'm not going to say it was a surprise, but we were very pleased, since this was the first time that we actually tried to phrase this kind of Big Science market, that this is not just CERN looking for something and ESA looking for something and different ESO facilities or ESRF or whatever. It's not single facilities, it's actually a whole market. And that whole phrasing actually evolved from this Big Science Business Forum. Yeah, and as I show there in the survey, there was a huge satisfaction ratio, and I especially like the 98% said that if there would be another BSBF, then they would also be interested in joining there. Of course, that's led to the arrangement of the BSBF first 2020, but then postponed a couple of times, and I'm very happy that Jorge and the team are working so actively and are really engaged in this. So I'm sure it will be a great event. When I sort of try and look back at the key ingredients that created the success at BSBF 2018, then the first thing is money or cash. The Danish government was very supportive of the idea and actually set down a team and provided the funds and guarantees needed to organize such an event. So we couldn't have done it without them. They were the main organizers. A second point was it actually took a lot of work over several years, where there's lobby work being done together with the heads of procurement and the directors of the different facilities. And in the end, there was a huge support from many facilities, and it's really important because that's the content of the whole event. That all these persons said that we will devote some persons to go to this event and present what do we need. Without those, we wouldn't have any content. We wouldn't have had a conference or a forum. The second point I want to make is that we did manage to mobilize quite a lot of companies. So as it says there was 530 companies participating from 29 countries. And really, this proved the value of the whole ILO organization. So, I mean, once the idea was drafted, then we actively used the different ILO fora at CERN and at ESS and at ITER to promote this event to all the ILOs, and then they could go to the companies and say, hey, wouldn't it be an idea for you to join this event? And we also went around to international particle accelerator conferences and user meetings and had flyers and stuff that we handed out and discussed with each individual companies that, okay, maybe this is something for you. And we actually, there was a lot of boot work being done by ILOs all over Europe to try and mobilize companies to go there. And really, I'll say it also was, Perea, I think, had formally been made the year before at the ITER Business Forum, but this sort of really proved the value of Perea. So a big success in this event. The second one I have is actually from the tech transfer area, where we 2 years ago did a pilot event. it was phrased so that certain technologies and ESA technologies and ETA technologies were relevant to industry. So please, do you want to come and learn more about and have discussion with these people? We thought it was an excellent program, but for some reason, I think there was less than 10 companies there. We did receive a lot of sort of mediators and people who were talking with companies, but there were very few actual companies who prioritized going here, even though we had great presentations there. So, I mean, it was really evident here that even though we had good content, we didn't have the right channels to reach out to the companies that were relevant for this. We co-organized this event with some cluster networks in Denmark, and we could see afterwards that maybe we should have engaged them more to sort of explain to the companies how they could benefit from this event. So, I mean, we had a nice event, but it could have been much bigger, and it certainly taught us that we need to be quite certain about the value proposition from this event, and then knowing our channels to the companies as well. So we will probably do this again at some point, but it was good learnings on the way. So the last thing I want to talk about is the Denmark at CERN event that we had last week, actually. So the country at CERN events are events for nations where typically countries that may be behind on the sort of return coefficient, that then a group of companies are invited to CERN and go through a program where the main thing is that they meet with technical or procurement staff from the facility and discuss what are the upcoming opportunities. So it's been very popular, and really we see now, after having organized it, I think 4 times, that there's really sort of a brand recognition in this whole concept. Obviously, for 2021, with the current situation, it's not possible to have the physical event, so we had to do it online, which was a huge worry and challenge for us. I'll say on the plus side, we had more participants that we would normally be able to persuade to go to CERN. But then on the downside, having these online meetings, one-on-one meetings, was not optimal. Right now, we are collecting feedback from our companies, but we heard from several of them thought that this was a great event, but we do need to work on something extra for having a better one-to-one relationship. I'm just described for the event. We had general presentation, and also want to mention that CERN were really cool to organize a tour into the tunnel system where a guy was walking around with a camera and showing us different things. So we thought that was a neat way to get around the problem of how to engage the companies. In the evaluation, I also want to highlight that CERN really may have access to excellent tools and offer very good support for us in this event. So that's great. We also see that for the next time, we should really do more into interacting with the companies before the event. I mean, we sent them mails and explained everything. I think we want to go all the way and actually have a phoning list and calling them up and saying how they can work and then what makes sense. So even though we've been doing this for 10 years, we are still learning, and I'll leave you at that and then join the debate later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikolai. Thank you very much for your presentation. I agree with you. In every event, you learn a new thing. It is really a challenge, and each time you organize something, you really learn. Now I am going to open the floor for questions from the audience to Nikolai from Denmark, from the Danish Technology Institute. Any questions from the audience?
Okay.
Yes, I see one, Javier Echevarri.
Yes, this is Javier. Thank you very much. I am Javier Echevarri. I am ILO for ISO ENRIITC in Spain. I wanted to ask Nicolai, it was very interesting to listen to him when you were talking about this technology transfer event, and you were saying that you had the feeling that you couldn't reach out to companies. What do you think was lacking here? Like more previous work on identifying exactly what projects coming from the big science infrastructures could match the interests of the company? Or do you think it's the general feeling that companies don't see research infrastructures as sources of technologies for their interests? What do you think? Can you elaborate a bit?
Yeah. I think companies are very different in how they would respond to it, and for some companies it's a very good match, and for some they have different objectives. I do see that we probably missed a lot of potential companies simply because we didn't interact with them. Our starting point was the members of Big Science DK, which is companies that are supplying, and it's not necessarily those who are most interested in these technologies. And then, as we were relying on the cluster organization partners to engage with companies, but in the end, I don't think they sort of considered it their event. So it was more, yeah, they put us in a newsletter, but they didn't do any active promotion. So I mean, I think you have to work with these industry associations and cluster organizations and use their knowledge about the companies that they interact with to see where is their match. So you have to spend more time with the sort of intermediaries, with the clusters, and not only focus on the companies there. And I think if we had spent more time sort of digging into that beforehand, I mean, I think we could have had more participants at the event.
Thank you very much, Nicolai. I have to agree with you because in our case in the BSBF, if we could not have with the help of the ILOs from all around Europe, or with Peoria and all the ILOs organizations in all the countries, the success of the event will not be guaranteed, because at the end it is your success, bringing industry from all Europe. Or Europe. Okay. Any other questions to Nicolai?
There might be a hand from Michael Baron.
Yeah, Michael.
Hi, thank you. Could you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Even if you want to switch on your camera, you can.
I have a bandwidth restriction.
No problem. Go ahead, Michel.
I'm trying. So I can confirm what Nicolai has said concerning the reduced success of their event at CERN. I've been invited to the Germany at CERN, which took place 1 month before, and it was a big success. There were 35 companies, and the event was spread over 4 days, and everybody was satisfied by the participation to this event. So I think that this kind of event must be organized very well and planned in advance to have a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel. Thank you very much. So if there is no more questions, thank you very much, Nicolai, for your intervention. I guess Michel is not trying to make another questions. Okay, now we are going to pass to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Caroline Boudou from the ILL. She's industrial contract officer, and the topic of her presentation is the basics to setting up a brokerage event for industry as for user of a research a research infrastructure. Sorry about that, Caroline.
Yeah, okay. Can you see the screen?
Perfectly. Everything is working perfect. So go ahead, Caroline, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. So we are now, as just Robert mentioned, switching to events related to user of research infrastructure. And in particular, for the experience I'm going to share with you, which is Synergy 2019, we were looking at potential new users, which was a bit of a challenge. If I can switch slides, it can be okay. Okay. So few words, I'm going to introduce the event, then explain what we did, and try to extract few advice related to this event. So this event was held in Lyon and co-organized by with ESRF. So not all of you maybe know that ILL and ESRF are two single-sided infrastructure located in Grenoble. They are very nearby, a few meters apart. And we decided to organize the event, not at the facilities, but in Lyon. I'll explain later why. So the objective of the event was to try to raise awareness about neutron and synchrotron techniques among target industrial sectors, which in that particular case were chemicals, consumer goods, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and trying to find new prospects. So in fact, we were targeting engineers, industrial researchers, people working in R&D department or innovation departments, CTO, CEOs of small companies. But we were trying to attract people that were not aware of these techniques, of these facilities, in fact. So as Jorge mentioned, we tried to set up kind of an attractive event for these newcomers. We developed this concept all in one day. That means that we wanted to give these newcomers testimonials from expert industrial users of the facilities. Also introduce some intermediary companies. There are companies that can try to solve technical requests from a company and to solve it using tools available at ESRF or IL. And in the afternoon, we ran two different, let's say, type of sessions in parallel. There were short tutorials because we wanted to give these newcomers an insight about what are the techniques or on which subjects they can be very useful for their development or innovation. And in parallel of these short tutorials, we were organizing B2B, R2B, research to business meetings. Yeah, and you can see on the left a screenshot of the catalog of participants as it appeared on the web page, developed by a partner company. I'm going to develop on that. So from up now, the slides are going to be quite dense. I apologize for that, but I will just focus on a few messages. So what we did regarding this event, I already explained, what was Synergy and what for. So we were trying to attract newcomers to get for them to be aware of ILL and ESRF. So the question when you start organizing an event is when to plan this event and how. So first we tried to insert this event inside an already existing event, which is run, let's say, annually or every 2 years in the area of Lyon. And we couldn't, I'll explain later, maybe we were a bit late in this, because we thought that it was difficult it would be difficult to attract people to something additional. As we mentioned, people are very busy nowadays, and in order to be more visible, we wanted really to be inserted in an existing event. It was not possible. We also had some constraints, regarding the timing, because the funding projects and resources to run this event relied on European funded projects. so that we have to take into consideration also the agenda of this project. Of course, the final date was selected upon several criteria. It eventually came up on a Monday, which maybe was not ideal, but that's life. Then we had to also decide how this event is going to be managed, and we shared, we subcontracted some of the activities, especially the registration and the tool, the software for the agendas of participants, which also includes a web platform with the web page of the event explaining the program. We also subcontracted the venue and the catering, of course. And in-house, we developed the program, the content for the web page, design, and we took care of the communication, relation with speakers, but also all the communication related to the participants. And as I just mentioned, participants were not known in advance because they were newcomers. So, sorry, I should have maybe put the where with the when, but it's there, where to organize the event. So we decided to go for Lyon, which is 80 kilometers far from ESRF and ILL. And there is a rationale behind this. It's because Lyon, in the French area, is a city which concentrates a lot of R&D in pharmaceuticals and chemicals. So we thought, and as it was not so far from Ireland and ESRF, we thought it's a very interesting place to organize the event. And also it's a beautiful city, so it's interesting, as George also mentions before. Yes, we also aim to attract a bit maybe of the people from the Geneva area, because it's easy to reach by train, even from Paris. So we thought it was a good choice. Then we need people, of course, to organize an event. We were co-organizing, so there were people from Ireland and ESRF side to develop, to prepare the content, try to find the expert industrial users as speakers, to invite them to come. They are busy people, so we really had to rely on our, let's say, good relation with these regular users from ILL and ESRF. There were some part of practical implementation. We had the help of assistants at ILL and ESRF as well. And communication and design relied on ILL communication officer. Then a question that was raised before: what are the metrics of success for this particular type of matchmaking event to newcomers? Well, first is the number and the distribution of participants. I mean, distribution among where they're from companies, large companies, small, etc., and so on. The number of prospects, good prospects identified by the facilities, because at the end we want to get some new leads, or for the intermediary companies, which are a multiplier for our facilities. Of course, the opinion of participants is always interesting to have. And also, but difficult to measure, we would like to have an idea of the actual impact for each participant. What do they think about the networking? And we should also have followed up this after 3, 6, 12 months, because a prospect leads develops with time, and not always right after the event. So this is an overview of the timing. I won't develop, but maybe for those interested, you can have a closer look at what we did. As you can see, main information that we sent to save the date to, let's say, mailing lists in November for an event taking place early in April, the year after. So the save the date was possibly okay in timing. And as I just mentioned, from the first event ideation, which took place in May, June, so almost 1 year before the event, was already a bit late because we couldn't took time to discuss with already existing event in the area of Lyon in order to include our networking meeting. So the main difficulty, main challenge in this event was to attract participants, because we want to attract newcomers. So, okay, ILLS had a list of a lot of business, collected a lot of business cards during when attending previous events. So we tried to select people working in the area targeted by the event and email these people. We also used, of course, social networks, especially LinkedIn, where we try to provide some content when posting, and not only speaking about the event itself, in order to create some content which is hopefully valuable for people and can attract them. We were also looking for partners, not for funding, but for communication. We were contacting local economic agencies, competitiveness cluster, industrial clusters, learned societies. We had 11 of them as partners at the end, so that they can outreach about the event. So they inform in their newsletter about the event, or could also tag in their posts in social network and so on. All of this, I mean, we had these 11 partners over the time, and some were with us very early, but some of them came late and maybe a bit too late. And if I now focus on the search for participants, so as I mentioned before, we sent emails. Of course, each time one of us was attending another event, we mentioned the fact that synergy would take place and so on. And I also tried to send connection messages to about 500 people on LinkedIn directly, targeting research engineer and so on in the area of Lyon, Paris, French Swiss area. The success rate was, I don't know whether it's low or not compared to something, because it has to be compared, but it was about 1%. So 5-6 people were interested at the end, but finally couldn't attend. I started this activity very late, I have to say, just 4 or 5 weeks before the event. So I still think that this approach can be valuable, but it has to be carried out early enough, and using a special tools available on LinkedIn, and not as asking for a connection as I was doing, which was something that went for free, but you have to use the paid for emails available on LinkedIn. And I think it's a way to better address people using this. So what about the success? Well, there is a core metrics, I would say, the key performance indicators. We were targeted, you can see on the table, and what was achieved at the end. So we couldn't reach the target. It's always difficult to really know all the reasons why we couldn't attract as many people we targeted. We targeted 60 registered participants, especially when you have to think that there are several thousands of people working in this area in Lyon. I can't remember the number. Maybe it's 20,000 people working in this area, the targeted industrial sectors in Lyon. So 60 was not, it could have been achievable. And so, but there was 25 newcomers at the end, so it's already something. And if we now turn to the feedback from participants, 21 participants that answered the poll, the satisfaction questionnaire, were happy with the event. The major weak point, according to organizers, to us as well, was that there was a lack of industry participants from industry, especially as solutions requesters. The strong points were the talks from the expert industrial users. So the people, the regular users we have invited, there were one person from BASF, another one from Procter & Gamble, and a third one from Total, who canceled just 10 days before the event. So we cannot replace her. But people underlined the fact that the location, the atmosphere, food and beverage were great. Sorry, so it's something to be considered. And the good points that we could find out a few weeks after the event is one of the intermediary company found its first customer during this event. So if as takeaway messages, they are not that different from the one already mentioned by Nikolai and George. So as we were targeting newcomers, the advice I would give is to focus on a specific topic or sector and try to make the content and the message clear about what you are going to provide. Make the event part of a recurring event is something that could bring more participants. So time is always a critical issue. Earlier you plan the event and you try to organize with partners, especially in order to spread the word, the better at the end or the easier at the end to attract participants. And because this event was targeting newcomers, if you want to evaluate the return on investment on your time and effort on organizing this event, then the facilities have to schedule the follow-up of prospects of new contacts as carefully as the event itself. Because we were engaged in European projects, we were then overwhelmed by reporting and so on, and we couldn't follow carefully the few person we met at this event. So this has to be really taken into account as well. And of course, in order to organize a, let's say, small scale event, try to get to work with motivated small team is always good and efficient, let's say. I'm finished and I can answer questions if any.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Very, very good presentation. I love the term that you mentioned, all in one day. This is a great idea. I think you make the people go to a place, be very busy, and then go out without any 5 minutes just to have a coffee or whatever. It's a very clever idea. I also agree with you that the place, to select the place, if you can, sometimes you can't, but if you can, it's very important because it brings a lot of people surrounding a city or an area. Very interesting. Also, the question of success and how to measure the success. Very important, absolutely. Because you may make the people meet, you make people have B2Bs, but you really don't know what happened afterwards. You really don't know if this contact has at the end come to a success in a contract or in a new business or in a new collaboration, because sometimes this keep behind the curtains. And thank you very much for your advices in the last biograph. Very interesting one. Any comment, any question to Caroline regarding her presentation from the audience?
Yes, I had a question.
I see Nigel, go ahead. Yeah.
Nigel Wagstaff from Aatris. I found very interesting the concept of using testimonials from industry and also the importance of intermediaries in setting up interaction. How important do you regard these, and are you trying to intensify that going forward in new events?
Yes, at least So since this event, we had no opportunity, of course, to organize a physical event. But each time, at least when we're working with the SRF, we try to organize something. We always think about the intermediaries company, how to insert them in a way or in another, yes. Because we think there are multipliers. Yeah, intermediary companies or RTOs, by the way, like the DTI. Maybe Ed, if you want to comment, because you were co-organizing this event.
Well, let's be honest, Caroline. You did 99.99% of the work, and it was bloody marvelous. The intermediaries are increasingly an interesting part of the ecosystem, and we certainly try to include them wherever we can. We've got some very, very good ones we work with on a regular basis at the SRF, and they're extremely. It's more than useful. I try and nurture a very positive sort of relationship with them, and indeed it would be nice if that could be even stronger in the future. One of Caroline's points about the follow-up, though, is incredibly important, and at the SRF, I am guilty. We go out to events, we do events, we give presentations, and then you plan everything, and then immediately after the event, it's sort of like, you know, all the energy goes, and there's no planned follow-up. And the follow-up takes as much time as the organization of the event, probably if you do it well and properly to get value out of what you've invested in already.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. Any other intervention? Okay, if not, thank you very much, Caroline, for your time, for your presentation. You really touched very, very, very important points. Our next speaker today is Claudia Faber from Bioimaging Industry Board. Claudia is going to give us a presentation about the technical workshops, building up business relationships through shared interests. Claudia, thank you very much again, and the floor is yours. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Jorge, for the introduction, and thank you to the preceding speakers. I think my being here reflects very well on the diversity of the research infrastructures that we represent in the ENRIITC consortium, because Jorge will probably be amazed when he looks at my presentations and sees that I might be advocating almost the complete opposite of what he did in his first presentation. So I was asked to give examples on how technical workshops help build these business relationships. And I think those are a very important foundation. You have to think not just about building new relations, but also deepening the existing ones, and also increasing interactions and business with your existing network. And so we already had some really nice examples. So the overall topic is how to organize brokerage events. Maybe you wouldn't necessarily consider a technical workshop to be a brokerage event, because the outcome that you measure is not really in terms of closed deals or sales, but it is rather deepening this relationship between industry and the academic world and the RI. And just a brief reflection on why people attend brokerage events or these events in general is, of course, on the academic side and the RI side, to meet suppliers. So that was definitely the event Jorge was describing, on learn about emerging technologies manufactured by industry and products that come to market, but also exchange on scientific and technical aspects, to find collaborators or investors even, to advertise their own skills and services. And that's important in the type of event that Caroline spoke about, where you look at users of your RI. For some, it might be meeting future employers. So there's always this element of transitioning between academic and industry world. And in general, just build relationships. And on the industry side, that's really meet the customers, obviously, and learn about new trends and the scientific needs of the research community, but also technical exchange, finding innovative ideas where one could collaborate on, and basically advertise own products, but also just advertise a brand or build an image. Recruit talent from academia and also build these relationships. And when we organize technical workshops, then it's really building on this shared interest, namely the technical and scientific innovation, to build relationships. And technical workshops, they really build on this interest that you have both on the academic and the industry side. Often you find a sort of artificial polarity where you say, oh, you have research on one side done at the RI, and you have industry, which you really don't look at as a player who does research, but that's not really true. So research and development takes place on both sides of the fence, so to speak. Many of the people working in industry, or maybe the majority, were at one point academic scientists or in a technical profession, and they share a passion for science, and they both have an interest to learn about latest developments in the field and to learn from each other and collaborate with each other. Then understanding the different motivations and objectives in academic, whether it's industrial R&D, that really helps building longer and lasting collaborations. And this aspect of increased mobility of staff, you will see later why I put that in and why that is important. And in technical workshops, you can also talk about common challenges that both sides have, but where they might have found different solutions. And this is a good opportunity to advertise, for example, RI services in an indirect manner by presenting solutions that your experts have developed and discussing a topic, a technical topic, and just demonstrating how capable you are and that you have the right people that can help industry also solve their issues. And you can, on the other hand, uptake knowledge from your industry participants and see how that can be employed in your own organization. So for technical workshops, you want to discuss maybe real science, you want to discuss technical specifications. So there's a bit of data involved, and you want to create an environment that really allows open exchange. You don't want to have a general quite bird's eye overview, but you really want to get down into the topic. So this is something that really works better in a smaller meeting, or if it's in a large meeting, then with smaller working groups, where you have known participants. So one thing I also consider is to have events really by invitation only, which gives it a bit of exclusivity, and it also helps that participants know in advance who will be present. They have a chance to know each other, and they know what they can share at such a meeting. You should be very clear about how public this event then will be, whether you will record presentations or make any of the content public, because if you do, then you might get different presentations than if you keep this a private meeting. When you request technical or scientific presentations, you really should allow sufficient time for presenters to get internal clearance on their contribution, or even consider CDAs, so that in my past experience working with pharmaceutical companies and in the context of these also EU collaborations, they often have formal approval procedures, which might be, we all know these notorious consortia agreements from the EC, where sometimes periods for clearance of publications or presentations can be weeks. So consider that in your planning, that you have sufficient time so that you get the content that you want and that is meaningful. And also when doing these technical workshops, manage your own expectations. This is not the type event that will lead to an immediate collaboration agreement, to an immediate contract. But some people will attend only to get information on the RI, and some, yeah, basically you're laying a foundation of, you're building this foundation of trust between the different players, and over time something will emerge out of it. And you have the technical discussion as a quite neutral ground where people can meet and interact before they talk business. So I think what I say now is it really applies to all of the meetings, and we've had some of it before, but it's really about the interaction. So informal discussions are key, and your agenda should really provide ample of time for discussions between the participants. So you should see that you arrange Q&A sessions, panel discussions, breaks. So really people can discuss the topics that have been presented and exchange in an informal manner. But don't just have your coffee break 2 hours long and hope that things sort them out, themselves out. But you can also drive the interaction by a carefully chosen agenda. You can give your breaks a purpose that triggers interaction. For example, don't do your housekeeping presentations right at the end of the session, or finish with a summary report on the RI's achievements in the last year, but really put the exciting presentations at the end, where there's a lot of discussion and people continue to talk during the break. Or try to set them tasks for the break, like organize a poster competition where people are asked to really review a poster or review an exhibit and vote on the best on, and also, of course, the before mentioned one-on-ones that you have to organize beforehand. And if you're like Caroline, trying to organize an all in one day, you might think, how do I squeeze this all in and make the breaks long? Just combine the breaks and the work with something social. You can have a bar alongside your poster session. You can do a working group where you have a packed lunch. And since this is a smaller meeting, you still have this interaction while you're working and while you're discussing a topic. And now, completely opposite to what Jorge presented in the beginning, for technical workshops, don't be afraid of the low-key options. You might not have a large team behind you that helps you organize this. You're also focusing here really on the technical exchange of people, a discussion of experts in a small group, a suitable meeting room, and having something to document the outcomes of the meeting that can be sufficient. And people will appreciate the discussion among peers. So technical workshops, they are really content and outcome focused from a scientific perspective, and they can be good opportunities when on limited resources, as I just mentioned, but that doesn't mean that they are not difficult or lengthy to organize. So you should still take care for really careful setting them up. So identify suitable topics where you have really a common unmet need or interest. And we did this, for example, in the past by community surveys or talking to experts in the field, what are unsolved challenges, studying white papers that have come out and conference programs. That also helps you identify some of the speakers you can invite. And select your participants carefully so that they are experts and contribute to the topic, and tailor your outreach accordingly. This might be really a personal communication, personally approaching them, because you're not inviting a large audience. And what is also important very much for these events is that ensure that your attendees are well prepared, so they are not overwhelmed with a question or a difficult topic to discuss where they haven't prepared and cannot participate. So you are responsible also for providing really good briefing material, for example, by sending some publications before and or a summary of questions to be discussed. And if you come from a distributed infrastructure like myself, or just have a lot of technologies on offer where you yourself can't keep track of the latest developments, invite some experts that help you set the scene, to introduce the topic, and that share the discussions, because you need somebody to kickstart the topic. And also important, we talked about the follow-up, really define clear follow-up activities also for the participants. What do you expect to get out of these workshops? Will this be a prerequisite for building working groups to go in depth into a topic? Do you want to publish a paper on the outcomes, a meeting? Do you want to have a follow-up meeting in a year's time and see what has happened in the meantime? And I want to give you two examples. So one is actually from when I was in my previous position, working for a large IMI project, the European Lead Factory, where we had annual events. Every year we organized an event with around 100 participants, with plenary sessions, working groups, and an integrated early career event. And here we had not only internal participants, but also external, but those were requested to sign a CDA before joining, so that we could really share and latest data. Had a competition for early career researchers, and for that we also matched reviewers. We basically had an evaluation panel where we matched some academics with industry representatives, and they were set the task to evaluate the posters and flash presentations. That already put them together in a fun task, because we're often looking at, when we organize these virtual events, each people and what tools to use. You can actually focus on the topic and the content and still have a playful element in it that brings people together. And we also asked academic and industry participants of the meeting to prepare some hands-on exercises for these young researchers and to chair these workshops and hands-on sessions, and that strengthened their interaction. So what are the outcomes? It's not really something that can be measured in cold KPIs, but it really helped to optimize the research pipeline in the consortium, because it fostered the exchange between the academic and industrial R&D units, and it really helped understand what are the motivators of the different parties, and also where exactly is the translation gap. So this project was set up for the academic side to develop tools and drug candidates that would then be taken up by industry. And there was quite a bit of debate on where exactly the translation gap is. So that the event itself led really to a lot of an increase in productivity and thereby savings, because the projects were more focused towards the outcome that was needed from industry. And also it helped to improve the academic pitch to, in the end, deliver a result where industry was really saying, oh yes, that has all the information that we are interested in looking at this further and taking it up. And we had several young people who found positions at companies and started collaborative projects. And that's really leads to a sustainability of interaction, because those people will still be around in a few years. And those are your first contacts to get back to and build new collaborations. We organized the events so that they were really based in a new network. We deliberately didn't organize them at any of the partners, but for example, new geographic areas where we wanted to reach out to. And we also, through a nice, basically PR and branding patch, could convince companies to sponsor the event and thereby get extra funding for the project. And yeah, by setting this in the new locations, we could multiply our outreach, because we used branches of existing partners and companies as locations for the meetings, and then engaged their network to advertise. And the second example I have is a rather smaller event. That's from the Eurobioimaging Industry Board, but before I joined the team. And that was a small workshop where we had really the chance that everybody could introduce themselves personally. We invited representatives from imaging companies and experts from our imaging facilities and associated research institutes and roughly half. And we identified the workshop topics by conducting a community survey beforehand. What would be the most pressing topics that you want to speak about with industry? And this was really an event which helped both sides. So the industry had access to academic experts that could help them improve their products. And on the other hand, the scientists could really get give a personal feedback to industry representatives on what their challenges were with instruments and using certain products. And it really brought the people together that are most engaged in the field, who are working on these challenges. And what were the outcomes here? So working groups being formed to define new standards, and which is a big challenge in the imaging field. It led to follow-up activities, another workshop on the same topic, and even the co-authoring of a white paper on metadata in Nature Methods. And it kept the industry continuously engaged and slowly expanded the contacts. So just quickly through the ILO and ICO role before the event, I think that is quite clear and similar to others. You need to be involved in the conceptual planning to identify the suitable topic and identify the experts that you want to invite. Depending on the size of your infrastructure and your team, you will have to do all the organization and planning, all the legwork. And also, as stressed previously already, you need a very good communication plan, and really thinking from the first personal invitation to public announcements, meeting registration, and also accompanying the event on social media. And what was stressed also is even more important is the role during and after the event. And here I would really advocate for keeping somebody dedicated on following the event. It's not taking care of the logistics and making sure the coffee arrives on time, but really following the people, monitoring the interactions, introducing people, setting up one-on-one spontaneous. So really looking at how does the exchange go. You have participants, you can keep track of this. Who has the same interest? Who is talking to whom? Has somebody mentioned something that he is looking for that somebody else has mentioned that he has, but they haven't spoken to each other yet? Are there any topics you might have not addressed in the meeting because you ran out of time or it just emerged? And these are really the topics where you need to do the follow-up. These are your opportunities for follow-up and bringing these players together, and follow up the event, not just with the overall communication, like sending minutes or writing a thank you note, but really approach individuals and say, I heard you talking about this and that topic, and I realized this other person has the same interest. Can I bring you together? Arrange what you can do at these smaller events as opposed to the large event where you're too busy with the organization and the overall big theme or scheme of things. So that's my presentation, and I've come to the end as well.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Thank you for your excellent presentation. Extremely interesting. We had some problems with the connection, but everything was fine and clear. No problem. I was extremely interested in the presentation you gave about the technical workshops, the small ones, devoted to technology, to really gain on the development of certain technology, only for invited people with really objectives. Of course, this is these are together with a specific objective meetings, but not for massive people, and also to events in which not all the information should be open to the public. But I think it is very interesting. Now we have time for one or two questions, not more, because we are really running out of time. If someone from the audience would like to make any questions to Claudia, now is time.
I can see Caroline has raised her hand.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Caroline.
Thank you for very interesting presentation where you raised very sensible points. I have a question regarding the working group that were organized on selected topics, where you could really achieve a result at the end with this paper. How have you prepared in advance this working group? I mean, how long did it take to find the appropriate people to make them agree to actively participate in this? Yeah.
So I want to be very honest with you here. I mentioned that before I joined Eurobioimaging recently. So this meeting is actually something that was organized by my predecessor, but I wanted to put it in because it's a Eurobioimaging event. But I can still give a few answers to that. So the first step here really was to have a survey in the community. So ask both the companies that we were already in contact with and the facilities, and we have quite a large number in our research infrastructure, to ask them what are really topics that you think need to be discussed, or what are common problems that you have when working with industry and using their products. To really have a topic where all of them are interested, where they are in agreement that they have a need to discuss this. And then we had selected experts from within our RI that were interested in the topic and basically pushing this forward. And those, of course, we saw from the survey as well. And then via them approached the companies to identify the specialists within the company that could speak to that topic. Because here, of course, we have our industry board where we have usually 1 or 2 people from a company represented, but they are usually the ones to spread the message internally and help us also identify the right experts within the company. And I think the whole planning here, since it was a smaller meeting, took something like half a year. But it was really key to have the scientists from the facilities involved to define the agenda and the topics, because I mean, to be frank, I don't have the technical expertise. You might have some RIs where you have a larger team of ICOs and they have the necessary experts. But I wouldn't be able to pinpoint what is the hottest topic in imaging right now, or what are the really technical details that are interesting now.
Thank you.
Jorge, you are muted still.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Claudia. Nikolai maybe wanted to make a question. Is it right, Nikolai?
I did raise my hand, but then time was running late. But I'm going to ask it anyway. So I thank you very much for great presentation, Claudia. I like the description of the ICO sort of running around, making things happen and picking up on things that were interesting to other parties. I was curious on one aspect, that is, have you tried that at a virtual event? And have you found any tools that could work there? That's the first question. Then the second question is, do you see some of these new tools that we are now using, like Mentimeter or whatever, being used in future physical events and actually facilitating easier use of these tools?
that's a difficult one. I have to admit that for virtual events, I still haven't found the thing that works in the same way. I mean, having the tools like Menti or so, that's a nice tool if you want to have maybe a quick poll or get some keywords. But I find it difficult for a technical workshop where you really have more discussion that's going back and forth, and it's also hard to, in these virtual meetings, to be fully observant. I mean, you have on one hand, it's a good thing you have only one person speaking at a time and you don't hear the others. But I mean, at the physical events, you also have you're sort of sitting there and somebody is presenting and you hear the two people next to you discussing the presentation, and you pick up something which you think, oh, that would be really interesting. And they might not get up and ask the question, but you can bring these people together later and say, oh, listen, I think the person who sat next to me has an interest in the topic. Why don't you speak to him? And I don't quite know how to make that work virtually.
Okay, Claudia, thank you very much. We are really a little bit late. So with your permission, I am going to jump into the last presentation, which is really an announcement to be made by Ed Mitchell from ESRF about the organization of brokerage events by associate members of ENRIITC. Ed, I am pretty sure you will be quick. Thank you very much.
I can be exceptionally fast. Should I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okie dokie. All right. Okay, you should be able to see something there with a bit of luck. So within ENRIITC, we have some resources to help the associate partners of ENRIITC to run their own brokerage events. Hopefully you've been inspired by the technical workshop or the thematic workshops or the B2B with suppliers. And within ENRIITC, there is a call open right now. You can go to the ENRIITC website, and we're making available a certain number of resources there for people. You can go and explore, run, pilot, test your own events with industry, locally, nationally, whatever you like. Deadline is 31st of August. What can you do? You can do any event that you want to do. It can be virtual, online, in person, when in person is able to be working again. It could be hybrid. It could be local, really local to your city. We've done that before in Grenoble. It could be regional, it could be national, it could be European, depending on your ambition. Target audience could be anything from industry. It could be industry as a supplier, industry as a user, it could be joint innovation, co-developments, whatever is important for your research infrastructure or your clusters of infrastructures or whatever there might be there. The style content tools, entirely up to you. Do whatever you want to. But of course, when ENRIITC is funding this, we'd like there to be value to the ENRIITC network in the longer term as well. And that's part of the demonstration in the application. The eligibility is you should listen to at least one, I think, of these, one or more of the ENRIITC webinars. So if you're here today, you're secure. You should have an appropriate staff that can actually run the event, as you've just been hearing, right? These things do take some level of resources, and you should have enough to be able to do that beyond the funding that we can provide. What can you get? Okay, you get up to about 5,000 euros. You can use this almost for whatever you want to, following Horizon 2020 rules. So you can use it for, if you need a Zoom license or support, you can use it for that. You can use it for staff costs. You can use it for speaker travel costs, catering costs for a nice coffee, right? I mean, you heard from Caroline how important the food and the beverages were at the event in Lyon. So you can use that within reason, okay, within sensible reason. You can use the money for whatever you want within those sort of kind of contexts. One rule, ENRIITC is finishing at the end of 2022, and we need to do some reporting before that. So we ask that events must be done by the start of spring next year, with a full report on the event about a month after the event's conclusion. We will need evidence. It's obvious, right? Bills, receipts, best value for money, so that you can we can justify the funding back to Brussels. So that was very quick, right? If you want to apply, the link is on the screen. You go to the website, you can find it. Deadline for applications is the end of the summer, and we'll give you decisions by about 4 weeks after that. So do take a look. If you have any worries or concerns, just reach out to any of the ENRIITC team, and there are links on the website. The application process is very, very easy, and there are no excuses not to give it a go. Was that quick enough, Jorge?
Perfect. It's really perfect. Indeed, everyone should apply right now and not wait till the weekend. And of course, do this first, and then go and book your holidays. But first, apply to the events that could be found by ENRIITC.
Just a question.
Yes.
How
Caroline?
many grants of 5K are available?
That's a very good question. At the moment, there's a sort of around 3 to 6 level. It rather depends a little bit, because I have to admit, within ENRIITC, like most of the projects at the moment, COVID has somewhat stymied some of the things that we were aiming to do. So depending on what happens with COVID in the coming months, then there may be more or a little bit less available. But you have a reasonable statistical chance, if that's a sub question.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ed, for your announcement. I would be delighted to have a long session of questions and answers, but we are a little bit late. Please do it by email. If you can, don't be shy to send us some extra questions, and we will address them to the audience. Please book your in your calendar the next webinar we have in front of us, 18th of June, from this time in a different time slot, 10 a.m. to 12 Central European Time, about industrial impact in big science market after 1 year of COVID pandemic. Don't miss this next webinar, please. Thank you very much to all speakers, to all participants. It was really a pleasure, a very interesting one, but I'm really anxious to further interactions with the speakers about the interesting topics they presented. Thank you very much to everyone. And with this, I think we conclude this webinar, and we are a little bit out of time, but you know, I'm Spanish, so this is usual. This is normal business. Bye-bye. Thank you very much to everyone.
Good work.